Of the SIPA Board of Directors, it's my pleasure to welcome you to SIPA 2013, Pathways to Publishing for Profit. My name is Meg Hargraves. I'm your conference chair, and after over 10 months of planning, I am very excited to say we are underway. So, hear. As a Washingtonian, a longtime Washingtonian, it's also my pleasure to welcome you to our nation's capital, and we did personally arrange all this lovely weather for you, no humidity, so we hope you're enjoying that. Over the next 3 days, you'll experience over 30 breakouts, 4 terrific keynotes, a variety of topical roundtables, a brain slam, and many informal opportunities to catch up with familiar faces and meet new business contacts. Among many of us, this wonderful annual event is not unlike a family reunion of sorts. This year, our 37th year meeting here in Washington, our family is bigger and better than ever, thanks to our merger with SIA, and SIA's subsequent merger with American Business Media, ABM. And that's not all that's new. A significant number of speakers on our program are new this year. They've never spoken at SIPA before. Because of this, you'll hear new ideas and perspectives, and you'll have more opportunities to broaden and expand your own personal business network. To those attending your 3rd, 10th, 15th, maybe 20th or more SIPA event who see a new face, please reach out, introduce yourselves, and introduce those new folks to others so we can kickstart that wonderful SIPA tradition of sharing and networking. On behalf of everyone in the SIPA division and the SIPA Board of Directors, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to those of you with us for the first time, especially our colleagues from SIA and ABM, so welcome. We have 4 exciting keynotes this year, and in a few moments, we'll hear the latest about mobile trends. Tomorrow, we'll hear about the seismic shifts occurring around content marketing from Joe McCambly of the Wonder Factory. And we'll learn how one of our country's most respected news organizations, the Christian Science Monitor, transformed themselves to a digital-first organization and created premium B2B content on the way. Lastly, on Friday morning, we'll hear from White House veterans Josh Bolten and Mike McCurry about what's happening just around the corner at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Before we get underway, just a few housekeeping items. If everybody could look at page 2 of your booklet, lots of valuable information here. There's a floor plan that will help you get to your breakouts. There's the Wi-Fi code, which is iProduction, and you've seen that on the slide here rotating. Thank you, iProduction, for being our cyber sponsor. And also important, our Twitter handle for this event is, our hashtag is #SIPADC 2013. So those of you tweeting, and we do hope you do tweet throughout the event, if you would be so kind as to use that, that would be great. And lastly, we have all of the presentations today, with a few exceptions, are on our download page, and that URL is right here in the booklet. It's sia.net, sipacon/presentations.asp, and that's right in the booklet. If you didn't get a booklet, they're up on the registration table. I also want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Comhouse, Epsilon, Information Evolution, iProduction, as I mentioned, and Multipub. Without your support, really, this event would not be able to take place, so we really thank you for your support of SIPA. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome our opening keynote speaker, and I looked at his slides last night, and I'm very excited. I think everyone's going to really enjoy the information he has to share with us. Terry Waters is the president and CEO of Yankee Group, the research and advisory firm that helps companies generate profit in an increasingly mobile world. Yankee Group forecasts the size of the new mobile economy to reach $3 billion in the not-too-distant future by 2017. Before leading Yankee, Terry was president and CEO of Highline Financial, a banking, information, and analytics company. He also held leadership roles at research company Gartner, including as CMO, and was COO of Screaming Media, the content syndication company. I think that you'll find that Terry's role not only as a content creator and a publisher, coupled with his expertise on mobile, makes him a perfect opening keynote for SIPA 23, and I think you'll agree. Please join me in welcoming Terry Waters.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. Oh, come on. Good afternoon. Thank you. Is everybody awake? Had lunch? Cup of coffee? Getting going? Good. Thank you for that introduction. So today we're going to try and cover a bunch of information. and there's our agenda. It's all about leading in the new mobile economy. We're going to talk a little bit about the size of the mobile economy and how that's changing. And as Meg just mentioned, it's a huge growth space out there. We expect it and forecast it to be a $3 trillion market over the next 5 years. So growing and getting bigger every day. In addition, we're going to cover a couple of key imperatives where I'll share with you some research that comes from our analyst community. And then I'll talk about, Meg asked me to talk about how we've been able at Yankee to leverage some of these trends in and around mobile to transform the Yankee Group business. Yankee Group is in the research business. We take and look at everything that has to do with communications and mobility and try and forecast where companies and trends and technologies are going to go. Over the last 2 years, as I've been the president and CEO, we've really transformed the business to be completely focused on mobile. So we'll talk about that and get into some detail there. So here's a quick look at sort of our forecast trends. You can look back at 2009, look at today, and then look at 2017 and where we're forecasting the mobile economy to go. And we expect it to triple in size, which is quite dramatic. And you can see how we break it down into 4 different segments: the mobile broadband space, mobile and connected devices, mobile apps and cloud, and mobile marketing and commerce. And you can see where, if you look back at 2009, mobile broadband was the dominant part of the mobile economy, right? You can expect that that's where the operators were and the infrastructure players were in building out a lot of the broadband capabilities around the world. That continues to be a big part of the mobile economy. However, we see a lot of growth in, obviously, devices, over-the-top players, and increasingly around mobile apps and cloud services, and also mobile marketing and mobile commerce, particularly driving forward. As we look at this opportunity, a couple of things and questions just to ponder over the next hour or so. And one is your company equipped to succeed in the new mobile economy? And we'll talk about some of the best practices. Are you making the right decisions as it relates to your business model and how to apply these trends around mobility? And how will your company ultimately participate in the mobile economy? So we look at the mobile economy, as I mentioned, sort of across these 4 dimensions that you see highlighted here in orange. But really, it's all about a virtuous cycle. And if you start at the top of the chart, it's really about this continuous evolution of broadband connectivity, capacity, and speed, which really drives an increasing mobile data adoption, activity, and more mobile transactions. And we'll talk about sort of how mobile commerce is evolving from the world of simply transactions to also include marketing prior to the transaction and loyalty and rewards and couponing and things of that nature, and how that's all needing to move towards something called omni-marketing or integrated value chains. And we'll talk about that. But that ultimately drives more content produced and optimized for mobile devices. So we'll talk a little bit about video and how that is driving demand, and how a company like Netflix, particularly with its recent announcement and partnership, expanded partnership, I should say, with Disney, is really driving mobile video, and how that's going to expand over the next years, and others getting into that space. And then ultimately, the rapid growth in users, and ultimately coming online and coming into the mobile world, demanding better and better customer experiences and more integrated customer experiences. And if you think about yourself as a consumer of this, whether you're at work, at home, or on the go, you can see how this is all needing to be really interconnected and interrelated. My favorite example these days, which will not be unfamiliar to those in the room, is Starbucks, which has a wonderful way of kind of bringing that whole customer experience together, from being able to find a location. It's across the street, walk out the hotel, it's to the left across the corner, to understanding whether I can get a free cup of coffee or whether I have to pay, to actually being able to preload the device with some money or a debit card, to being able to, through the use of a QR code, be able to quickly transact at the register and then get a reward or a loyalty or an update later about my experience and my relationship with Starbucks. So I feel very much connected to the world of Starbucks and making sure that I have an experience that works, whether it's in the morning, the midday, the afternoon, whenever I'm going in there, whether it's by myself, whether it's on the road, whatever. So that whole interrelated virtuous cycle plays into that particular brand. You can think of others, and we'll talk about those as we go forward. Okay, so we said we'd talk about these four sort of key imperatives as we drive forward. And the first one is really mobility has created a deepening focus on customer experience. And again, sort of tying into what we just talked about with having heard that, I'm going to do the same. So I don't have that problem. Look at that. You know, you forget these things are always on. All right, so that's done. Good. Thank you for that reminder, whoever had that interruption. Good. That was very helpful. So the headline here, customers are spending more time with mobile devices on a more frequent basis. I don't think anybody would say that's a revelation. But I think what's interesting here is our consumer and enterprise worker survey data, which gets updated quarterly. We go out and survey over 5,000 consumers in North America and Europe, and also over 1,000 enterprise workers and IT decision makers to get these facts. It's interesting to see that 63% of users state they need to be connected at all times. So back to what I just went through, right? It's all about feeling this notion to be tethered all the time and being always on. Over half of them now state that it's important not only to their work life, but also to their social life. So being able to interact and drive both of those, whether you're at work, at home, or on the go, is really critical. So ultimately, being able to play into that experience as a brand, as a publisher, providing content, driving that into your partnerships is going to be critical, whether it's with consumers or with folks working. A successful mobile experience must connect the entire customer life cycle. We see people kind of looking at this in silos still. And more we're seeing people bring this together into an integrated experience. So if we touch on a couple of things here, mobile marketing, sort of the beginning of bringing the experience to life. Mobile coupons have emerged as a strong marketing device with an 8 to 20% higher close rate than traditional marketing activities. So the ability to have a coupon delivered in context to a user that's trying to transact drives 8 to 20% higher close rates. So that's pretty remarkable when you think about sort of the world of coupons offline, paper-based, or other kind of loyalty cards trying to get that level, and we see that increasing. When you look at mobile sales, mobile commerce is emerging as an important channel, with 24% of users considering mobile shopping applications an essential part of their mobile experience. So the whole notion of bringing the ability to transact into the experience, whether you're in a physical or digital experience with a particular retailer, is critical. Mobile rewards, mobile applications such as coupons can create a level of just-in-time engagement, which is crucial to keeping users engaged. And then ultimately mobile care, which is important for retention. 17% of users place mobile service at the top of what they expect for interaction. So the ability to say, call my 800 number, interact with my website, increasingly people are saying, I want to be able to have a seamless customer support experience across all three of those environments. So ultimately, consumers want to interact with businesses on any device, through any channel, find whatever they want, wherever they are, at any time they want it. So this concept of being online and mobile and always on is really critical. So the takeaway from this is the future of customer experience really is all about three key things. One is convenience, ultimately easing complexity as users move from device to device, application to application, network to network. So the ability to have a seamless and convenient experience wherever you are with whatever device you're having it. And in the content world, that also extends, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, to multi-device experiences. So the whole notion of I'm watching TV, I'm looking at my tablet, and I'm texting on my phone, being able to make that experience as seamless as possible is critical. Connectivity, so having that seamless connectivity, whether it's Wi-Fi, 3G, 4G, or LTE, to use a couple of acronyms, demands a consistent experience. Consumers are demanding it, whether they're here in the US, whether they're traveling, whether they're at work, at home, on vacation, wherever. And finally, context is important to the world of publishing and the world of advertising. Because I don't know about you, when you get those kind of banner ads on your mobile phone, I don't know how many click on them. Anybody? Right? So the whole notion of being able to drive something through an experience that serves me with the transaction I'm trying to drive on my mobile device is really going to be important. So this whole notion of context and consumers expecting brands to know who they are, so the use of data, wherever they are, and the context of the transaction they're trying to drive going forward is going to be really critical. And the good news is, through the use of data and analytics and personalization technologies, that'll be increasingly something that can happen. So just another opportunity for folks to consider. Have a little water here. Okay. So our second imperative, evolving mobile ecosystem dynamics must balance cooperation and competition. So the news is full of, Samsung's going to beat Apple, Apple's going to beat Google, Facebook and Twitter, and just kind of all these kind of competitions. But increasingly, if you look at ecosystems, it's really about cooperation. And yes, people want to win and they want to drive revenue, but ultimately it's about more and more about cooperation. So let me just talk about ecosystems, because I think it's important that we define what they are. It actually was a term coined, because it gets thrown around a lot, by a fellow by the name of James Moore. If you remember Crossing the Chasm, originated a strategic planning concept of a business ecosystem in the early 1990s in his seminal book, The Death of Competition. He defined a business ecosystem as an economic community supported by a foundation of interacting organizations and individuals. The economic community produces goods and services of value to customers who are themselves members of the ecosystem. So it's supply and demand side working together to be able to create this ecosystem. So it's not just about a device, it's not just about a network, it's not just about content, it's not just about it's about all of these things interacting, and ultimately all of us feeling like we're getting benefit and value from participating in that ecosystem. So ultimately, I think that really gets back to this whole notion of, yes, every business is in business to make money and to create value, but also it's about creating worlds of cooperation as well. So let's take a look at this. So a couple of other stats here. Sort of new attitudes, behaviors, and usage patterns create opportunities and challenges. If you look at our forecast for the number of consumers that are going to be touched by connectivity in 2015, either through some sort of a device and some sort of a network and some sort of a connected experience where they're on the go, 5 billion, right? There are 1 billion smartphones in the world today. So just get a sense of kind of where the penetration is of smartphones. There's many more mobile handsets, obviously, because they've been out there for a long time. But the notion of there's a lot more to come and a lot more expected creates an interesting opportunity for all of us. New kinds of devices. So you're seeing, I was just up watching CNBC, and BlackBerry, right? We can all chuckle. Is coming out with its QWERTY keyboard today in the US, so we'll see how that goes. We happen to think at Yankee that they've got a pretty good shot of becoming the third ecosystem, particularly because of their enterprise penetration, not necessarily because of their consumer penetration, while Apple and Samsung, or Apple and Android, but notably Samsung from a device point of view, continue to be the dominant players. But just looking at this, you even saw Facebook, right, introduce Home. Right, its device where Facebook is going to be the primary way, or the Facebook timeline is going to be the primary way that you access your mobile device for those that want that social experience to be the first part of their experience with their mobile device. Amazon, obviously with the Fire, but also looking at ways to get into the mobile smartphone space, and perhaps with a device in their own operating system. So you're seeing there's an X group of I'm blanking on the name of Nokia executives that have launched a new operating system, Jola, in Europe that has some interesting trends. So just kind of this whole notion of devices and then expanding from that to tablets, right, which Apple is the dominant player, but now you have a new category called phablets, which is a phone and a tablet, right? Think about the Samsung Galaxy, right? It's the bigger form, right, that's kind of an in-between. You look at the smaller Apple iPad mini, right? You start to see all these different formats and form factors as well coming into the mix. So we are not going to be short of devices and the proliferation of devices and the proliferation of choices. So the ability to drive a connected experience, to drive the right content in the right context is going to be really important for publishers and ultimately for advertisers that want to drive their businesses moving forward. New kinds of connections. This is the amount of mobile data connectivity that will grow between 2010 and 2015. So just enormous strides as far as the bandwidth available. This is what's driving a lot of the trends around mobile video and people wanting to consume video on the go. Interesting new ad format, right, to be able to deliver a message more than a pop-up and perhaps do something in context to be able to deliver a higher value around that as well. And then new ecosystems, revenue generated worldwide by consumer and mobile apps. If you think about this, 5 years ago, this market didn't exist. So 5 years ago, consumer apps didn't exist. It's now a $46 billion business. Holy mackerel. Wow. Right? That's remarkable. And enterprises, right, whether it be media companies, banks, retailers, are just getting into the game to provide their own apps, right, to be able to drive different kinds of opportunities and trends around that. So pretty exciting what's going on here. What does this all mean? So it means some interesting things. So in this case, we're talking about the smartphone ecosystem, just to continue down that path. And we've just published some recent research that took a look at the various operating systems, Android, Apple iOS, BlackBerry, Windows Phone, and Facebook Home, and just took a look at sort of what their center of gravity is, which is where they make money, right? And tried to put the bubbles up there to sort of show where the opportunity is. And you can see the differences across the different ecosystems, whether you're Google. You don't necessarily today make a lot of money on hardware or licensing. You make a lot of money on apps and media, more increasingly getting into the cloud services business, a ton on advertising, no surprise, and growing very rapidly from an overall revenue point of view. Apple makes a lot of money and a lot of margin on their devices, about the same on apps, a little bit more on media, so that's the whole App Store and iTunes and things of that nature. Not as much on cloud services. That's been a bit of a weak point for Apple. Not really a ton on advertising, kind of a closed loop experience, and obviously driving a large chunk of revenue. BlackBerry, you see kind of a change there, right? If you were to look at this 3-4 years ago, it would have been a different picture. Their center of gravity is around email and security, particularly in the enterprise. They make good money on the hardware. Not so much money in the other places, so that's part of the challenge that they're having as they move forward. So as you look at these, a couple of things pop out. Cloud services and folks that want to play in the cloud services space should really consider partnering with the Google ecosystem. Google has the most extensive APIs to create new cloud apps and opportunities. Conversely, if your initiative depends on optimal on-device experience, Google's probably not the best partner. For on-device, Apple's probably the best partner, since Apple controls the hardware, software, and the store, and is best at delivering the optimal on-device apps and media experiences for those that want that. And then finally, productivity players and people that are interested in security and secure devices should probably partner with BlackBerry. So does your business require seamless communications and enterprise-grade security capabilities? Then you should be working with BlackBerry. Since these, excuse me here, I'm just getting over a cold. So Always makes it fun. Put that there. Good. Since this survey work was just completed in Q1 of 2013, Windows Phone and Facebook Home are relatively new, and if we were to look at them standalone from that survey work that we did in North America and Europe, they show little momentum to date, even though Facebook recently announced that in Q1, 30% of their revenues for Q1 came from mobile. So they're definitely focused on mobile. We'll talk about them a little bit later as one of the what we call the four horsemen of mobility driving forward. So the bottom line is enterprise users and app developers have the highest probability of success with the ecosystem if their interests are aligned with the particular center of gravity of that ecosystem. So just something to consider. So another way of looking at it, this is some research that comes out of our forecast data and our survey data. It was completed in the second half of last year, looking at sort of market size and the platform landscape. If you look at sort of the left axis is all about, excuse me. Interesting, that fell out. So the left axis, I'm going to read it off here, is percent planning to buy, and the right axis is percent to own. So it's looking at market share and intent to buy. So if you look at this, you can see that Android-based phones, of which Samsung would play in, and HTC and others, has the largest market share, but the highest level of intent to buy, and this, if you recall, was done right around the time of the iPhone 5 launch. Apple was really the leader there. We're about to refresh this data and look at it. But it's just interesting to look at how far along the axis of who's gaining share and who's losing share Android and Apple are compared to the others that are at the bottom, sort of clumped at the bottom. So the focus is who ultimately becomes the third ecosystem. One of the things that will potentially drive the emergence of a third ecosystem is the operators, right? Because they subsidize the phones and the operating systems coming to market for consumers and businesses. So keep an eye on that, in that who starts to get traction, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's the Nokia phone, whether it's BlackBerry. We are forecasting it's BlackBerry. We've published research on that. Our forecast data and survey data would indicate that based on recent work that we've done. So keep an eye here. Okay. So another example of business model transformation and ecosystems, music, sort of today and over the past several years, video tomorrow. And if you look at the music industry, right, Apple has been able to really transform that through the creation of iTunes, then ultimately the iPod, and now being able to let that exist on smartphones. But now you're starting to see even more online and mobile capabilities, whether it's Shazam, Pandora, Spotify, other music services. It continues to evolve moving forward. The next wave of disruption in the media and entertainment business we expect to be around video. With the rollout, as I talked about earlier, of increasing speed and bandwidth, 4G and LTE around the world, new data plans, a lot of interesting new data usage plans coming into the marketplace. That's a huge area of focus for the operators, trying to move away from sort of all-you-can-eat to different tiering. And trying to figure out where the sweet spot is. It's a work in progress, but you're seeing better, I think, plans and things that you can upgrade on the go and not feeling like I'm being pinched or slowed down. So that whole sort of controversy that was out there seems to be dying down, but that's very much of a focus of kind of how to provide the right level of bandwidth and speed and get paid for it, right? You don't want to deliver it for free or not have enough opportunity to recoup your investment, because you're talking about investments to lay down this capability for 4G LTE around the world in the billions of dollars. In addition, also counting the spectrum and being able to optimize the spectrum, which 4G and LTE does a better job at, but there's still a requirement for more spectrum moving forward. So we believe that mobile video will begin to remake the media and entertainment business, TV business, and movie business. Recently, Yankee Group survey data shows that 37% of consumers look at video on tablets on a daily basis. 37% look at video on tablets on a daily basis, and that's going up dramatically. 32% do the same on a smartphone every day. So it's pretty dramatic increases in what people want from mobile video. And that's literally watching a show, or that's watching a movie, right? That's not watching a commercial, right? But it could be, right? As you start to think about different ways that you can bring more branded content to market. So huge opportunity here. The advent of faster speeds, better plans, improved devices. As I mentioned, phones, tablets, and phablets. Mobile video, we believe, is set to explode in the near term. Obviously, the sort of the one that we look at as a star, but also as somebody that's had its challenges over the last several years as they've transitioned their business model and their ecosystem, is Netflix. We think they've won over traditional pay TV with an aggressive multi-screen strategy, so being able to provide that consistent customer experience on a smartphone, a tablet, on a TV. So being able to provide that consistently. Flexibility being an important attribute for consumers, and a broad category of apps and content available. Recently, just talking about ecosystems, Netflix signed a multi-year agreement with Disney for premium content. So as an extension of the TV shows that they were able to bring to the market from Disney ABC. It's a major win for Netflix. They're also driving into their own produced content. Disney is the first studio to bypass premium channels to deliver movies to TV subscribers. So kind of an interesting departure for Disney, and an interesting partnership in the Netflix ecosystem. Interesting enough, one little side note that doesn't get mentioned very much is Disney had tried to launch its own streaming service called Disney Movies Online, which failed to catch on with customers, and it'll be shut down on December 31st. So they're getting out of the business and looking to partner with Disney, with Netflix moving forward. So in addition, according to our forecast data, Yankee forecast data, Netflix moved past Comcast earlier in 2012 to become the largest paid video service provider in the US. So consumers are responding to compelling content offered on flexible terms on multiple devices. In the past 4 quarters, usage of Netflix on notebooks, tablets, and phones has increased by 5 percentage points. If you look at sort of the business model, 3 key principles keep kind of jumping out. We just did a recent case study on Netflix. Obviously, content is king, right? No surprise there. 2 is keep pricing simple, so make it really easy to consume that content. And 3, enable a great customer experience on any device, anywhere, anytime. And that's how they run their business. So there's a ton of other stuff that goes on behind the scenes, but that provides an interesting context, I think, for how they're being successful. They've got challenges, no doubt, in balancing costs with growth. So they paid, I think, over $300 million for the Disney relationship. So they got to drive a lot of subscribers, right? So the marketing engine of Netflix is going to be out there and in front of us. Looking at that pricing policy, does that hold as they move forward? And then international markets, right? They've been very successful in North America. They are still fledgling in Europe and Latin America, and not even in Asia. So opportunities, but also challenges, as we all know, as you move overseas. Some of the licensing rights get different, and some of the connectivity challenges start to emerge, et cetera. And as you move into emerging markets, those get larger and larger. So anyway, but an interesting one to look at from the video ecosystem as we move forward. So net, mobile leaders can't go it alone. Ecosystems create tomorrow's winners. Some other examples, we talked about smartphone, app stores, sort of the evolution in the app store world around native apps versus HTML5 continues to be kind of an emerging, continues to be a driving trend. If people really need a all-consuming experience, typically going down a native app path. If you're sort of looking at something that's more of a passive experience, more of an HTML5, there's also a new world emerging called hybrid apps. It's kind of a little bit of both. So I'm not an expert in this space, but happy if folks would like to talk to somebody. We have experts that can talk to that. For publishers and media companies leveraging these trends around faster broadband, the appification of content and customer experiences, more multi-screen at work, at home, on the go, and the ability to partner well is going to be critical going forward. Excuse me. So let's jump to the third imperative. Mobile technologies are putting a premium on business model innovation. So let's define a business model. A business model describes the rationale of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value, right? So we talked about an ecosystem, we talked about a business model, right? The essence of a business model is that it defines the manner by which the business enterprise delivers value to customers. So how do you actually engage your customers? How do you sell, market, serve them? How do you extract money, right, or currency? How do you get customers to pay for that value? And then how do you convert those payments to profit? In other words, how do you make money as a company in the marketplace? So some examples, just to belabor the point for a moment: bricks and mortar, bricks and clicks, right? We know that one. Franchising and multi-level marketing, direct sales versus channels and distributors, subscription versus licensing business models, et cetera, et cetera. So there are lots of ways to think about this, but understanding what your business model is and understanding how it's changing and how mobile impacts it is really what we're talking about here. Okay. Oops. So just a couple more data points. Active mobile apps users worldwide will exceed 2 billion by 2016. So that just gives you a sense of how fast the number of smartphones, because you got to have a smartphone to access the apps, or a tablet, or a smart device to be able to access that, are going to rise, right? So you see sort of the exponential growth of smart devices that will be able to enable people to access apps. So as you think about sort of marketing to them and having them consume your content, this whole notion of mobile first becomes really a critical component of how you lay out your digital strategy and extend how you want folks to access your content. One of the interesting points, and we'll touch on it later, is it's not just about creating a mobile website. It's actually about creating a mobile experience and starting there and working back to the desktop experience. So it's a complete reversal. It's not just saying, let me just shrink my website or just create some easy ways for people to find stuff. That's a step. But if you really want to create mobile first, it's about starting with a new design construct around mobile, around the tablet and the smartphone and other smart devices, and driving back to the desktop. And it's not one or the other, right? Because we still use our PCs and our laptops, right, and at home, right? But increasingly, the content experience we want to have on our smart device is going to really drive the day. So, in addition, smartphones in use worldwide will exceed 2 billion. So, as I mentioned earlier, there's 1 billion today in the marketplace and 2.4 billion. So just dramatic growth, if you think about that going forward. Okay. So, complicated chart, I apologize. We'll provide it. We've just published some new research in this space. But really what it says is enterprises are extending their key business processes across a value chain that links marketing, purchasing, payments, and rewards. So as you think about sort of this mobile experience and this appification of your business, being able to think about it across all those dimensions of how are you marketing, how are people purchasing and transacting with you as a business, how are people paying you, right? And then ultimately, how are you rewarding them for their purchase or their loyalty, right? And again, it's early days, right? You're seeing some examples like the Starbucks of the world that are kind of getting it right. And then you see a lot of other people that get parts of it right, but not the whole thing. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So ultimately, mobile, we believe, is resetting the parameters of marketing and commerce across all of these dimensions, from demand generation to payments to loyalty. Mobile has risen to the top of the agenda for chief marketing officers. So again, for customers that you're serving and brands that you're serving, this is something that is at the top of their agenda and the top of the marketing agency's agenda as well. And it's really popped up there quite dramatically in the last 12 months. The reason for this is, as we've talked about, mobile are deeply embedded in the daily routines of consumers, whether they're at work, at home, or on the go. So the ability to leverage that connectivity to be able to deliver the right marketing experience, the right purchasing experience, the right loyalty experience at the right time is really critical going forward. So second point is companies are reevaluating their business models to incorporate mobility, and you can see some of the trends, and this is from recent survey data in North America and forecast data around the world that looks at sort of the touch points that businesses are looking to drive forward around mobile. So creating a mobile website up from 71% to 85%, integrating social networking or mobile coupons via into their value chain that we just described, from 50% to 75%. So thinking about what that means and how that impacts, and then creating a mobile app, right? So it's hard to talk about anybody today that doesn't have an app, particularly in the media business. But this whole sort of push to build an app, it's really about thinking, again, not about building the app, but saying, how do I want to create a customer experience that somebody's going to interact with me? And is the app the best way to get somebody there? And then can I create this value chain across all these dimensions, either myself or with partners? And increasingly, if partners are part of the mix, they're part of you. So you're creating your own ecosystem, making that work, from how you're going to market, to how people are going to transact with you, to how they're going to pay you, to how you're going to reward them. And being able to make that work consistently across the board is really critical. Just in the spirit of real-time content, I was online this morning, and Walmart's Gibu Thomas, who's the head of their mobile strategy, had an interesting quote recently about how mobile technology revenue at the company. Over the holidays, almost 40% of brand new customers to Walmart.com came through mobile. Wow. 40% of brand new customers to Walmart.com came through mobile. So it's a huge customer acquisition vehicle for them. 10% of our online sales through our apps happen when the customer is in a store. So it's not just I'm on the go, I'm actually in the store and saying I want to buy, right? And you start to think about that. I'm at Walmart and I want to buy. I wonder what it looks like on Amazon. Right? And so you start to get this whole construct of where can I get the best experience, from the thing I want to buy, to how I'm going to buy it, to how am I going to get it, right? To how am I going to get rewarded for it, right? So that, again, it ties right back into that. And I may say, Walmart's probably not going to get it to my door by X date. Amazon will. I'll make that choice literally on the fly. So that whole notion of being able to make that transaction, even in a physical retail experience, really interesting and really critical. Okay. So again, another look at this sort of value chain, but it's really all about omnichannel business model success. And our recent research and survey work and our prediction is marketing at the right time with the right message can improve results by 40%. If you go back to some of that feedback that we had around mobile coupons, around mobile loyalty programs, pretty significant and dramatic. So whether it's retail, media, banking, this whole concept of omnichannel business model success is really critical. And what we mean by that is really creating a seamless, connected experience across all channels of consumer interactions, as well as seamless operations across brand, supply chain, marketing, sales, and customer support. A lot of words, but it's really about business model and business processes and aligning the two. Because you can have a neat business model, but if your business model doesn't line up to make that an integrated experience, it will not work, right? So you can build a cool new app, right? Start to push it out there. But if people come through that and then can't get what the experience they expect to get, because now the experience bar is being set by others, and we'll talk about the four horsemen in a minute, whether it's Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple, et cetera, really important to align both of those. So the key to success for mobile engagement is mobilizing the entire customer journey, really going back to this whole construct of mobile first. Whether it's coupons or commerce or care, it's really all about that. And ultimately, we think loyalty programs are going to really be an opportunity for competitive differentiation. If you look at many of the examples out there, that's a missing component. You think about your airline, right? You can check your flight status, you can transact, you can buy your ticket, right? You can look at other flights, but the rewards program is still kind of off on the side, right? So why, right? How could that be brought into the mix and just make that a seamless experience with American Airlines, United, whoever your carrier of choice is? So again, as we talked about before, sort of those 3 C's, convenience, connectivity, context, come back again across the board. So a couple of takeaways. Business model innovation is required across the board. We've talked about that, leveraging connected devices, right content, right media at the right time, and really making that whole transaction engine work. We think mobile changes the rules of media, so control moves from the brand to the mobile user or the consumer. So now as the user, I want to tell you what I want to consume. Don't tell me what I want to consume. Right? So that's a fundamental change from a push model to a pull model as you think forward. So it's going to drive different opportunities for advertising and branding. Monetization, consumers are turned off clearly by ads on smartphones that lack relevance. Publishers and advertisers need to use data to increase the relevance in ads. So the focus on big data and analytics continues. So the bottom line, I mentioned this virtuous cycle before. It's really all about broadband, driving transactions, driving new content, driving better customer experiences, driving more, just all that flow working consistently across the board. Okay, we'll just have some fun before we jump into the Yankee story. This is all about what we call the four horsemen of mobility and looking at sort of the notion of best practices and are there any? This is research that Yankee published back in 2012, and we've continued to update, both looking at these four players, which we'll talk about in a minute, as well as others that we think could enter the fray as potential four horsemen. So looking at that. In all, these guys generated over $200 billion in mobile revenues from products, services, and/or advertising in 2012. So pretty significant dollars. So there's our model, and you can see kind of how we lay it out. On the left, you've got direct revenue, indirect revenue, so advertising versus subscriptions, if you will, or buying certain things. And then web-centric versus mobile-centric. And you can see the four: Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Google. Everybody pretty much knows the Apple story, and they're going through kind of an interesting challenge. They still generate more cash than any company in the world. So it's pretty interesting to see, although they've suffered from sort of an innovation drought, if you will, and they haven't introduced a new product in, I think, 18 months at this point. So I don't know if that's an innovation drought, but sort of looking at what's going on out there, they're continuing to chug lots of different interesting things from wearable computing, which Tim Cook just mentioned. Excuse me. Good. These colds are trouble, I'll tell you. So wearable computing, TV, right? All sorts of interesting things that they're working on in addition to expanding their different devices and the portfolio of devices. Google, as an example, is on a run rate to drive over $12 billion in mobile-focused revenues for 2013. So pretty amazing as far as that growth engine. So I'm just going to keep this handy now. Amazon is generating tablet e-reader plus mobile shopping and cloud services plus third-party sales of mobile products and services. And Facebook this year, from zero to, if you look forward, is going to generate over 25% of its total revenues for 2013 will be from mobile. So over 700 million people access Facebook over a mobile device today. So just a huge opportunity for them as they move forward. So what can we learn from these four giants? What do they have in common? A couple of things. One is their CEO and board focus on mobile as a future growth engine. So it starts at the top, right? We all say that in these speeches, right? But it starts at the top, where the CEO and the board, right, say mobile is critical and a number 1, 2, or 3 priority for us as a business moving forward, right? So if that doesn't happen, it's awful hard to work it from the bottom up. It just is, right? You're seeing an interesting trend on boards where they're hiring a digital executive onto the board, right, to be able to increase their digital IQ, right? And there's a huge kind of push within the search community to find people that can serve on board. And you're seeing all sorts of interesting people from different walks of life joining more traditional corporate boards to bring that value to the table. They each have great mobile brands, and they reinforce their brands around mobile. They have large, engaged mobile user bases, and they drive, obviously, significant revenues from their mobile businesses. If we think about going forward, are these guys going to be able to continue to hold this lead? So we took a look at a couple of other players that could potentially jump into the fray here and claim a stake in the four horsemen race. So You may not agree with all these names, but there's some interesting ones that we're going to take a look at. We started to do that work and publish some interesting research on this. So in the mobile broadband space, AT&T, Verizon, you've seen some sort of AT&T moving into the digital lifestyle business and really trying to leverage that in a very creative way. Verizon continuing to just grow like a juggernaut, now looking to take over its Vodafone, the part of Vodafone that they don't own already. China Mobile, the largest mobile operator in the world, operating only in China, but a huge extended reach within the China marketplace. And then some other interesting mobile operators around the world, Telefonica being one that is quite innovative, both in the Spanish market, which is struggling now, but more importantly in the Latin American marketplace. Mobile apps and cloud, folks like Disney, Yahoo, I'd add Netflix to that. And then enterprise mobility is starting to come into the fray. You're seeing a lot of companies, CIOs and COOs look at enterprise mobility platforms, so what are called MEAPs, mobile enterprise application platforms. And we've done a bunch of research on that. Really allows you to take your enterprise systems and mobilize them for your workforce. So whether it's your ERP system, your CRM system, et cetera, bringing business apps to the world of mobility. Devices, Samsung continues to chug along, and then we talked about sort of who could play that third ecosystem role. And then in mobile commerce and marketing, some interesting players, Visa, MasterCard, making a lot of noise out there in the marketplace around moving to mobile and making investments in the space. eBay, huge push on mobile. If you listen to John Donahue speak, mobile is kind of #1 on his priority list. PayPal is a huge enabler to that, which is part of eBay. So, a huge opportunity in the mobile commerce space. Opportunity to play up there with Amazon. Alibaba is the largest similar firm in Asia, and then Verifone, which is in the mobile payment space. So just some interesting players that I think are fun to look at as we move forward as to who might ultimately come into the mix here. So key takeaways, as we talked about, starts at the top. It's not about fighting the technology or saying that it's not going to happen. It's really embracing the technology, and also key business trends like consumerization, bring your own device to work, what's known as BYOD, and sort of being part of the trend and looking for ways to think about the ecosystems you play in and the business models that you work with and how you can evolve going forward. One thing I'll tell you is the speed at which things are happening is increasing in the mobile space. There was a fascinating deck that was put together. You can find it on the web by Mary Meeker. Mary Meeker is the former head of internet at Morgan Stanley, went over to Kleiner Perkins, probably about 3-4 years ago to run their digital media fund, $1 billion fund they created, Kleiner Perkins created. She does an annual update on sort of digital trends, and mobile is probably 50% of the deck. So it's just interesting to look at sort of the amount of change and the amount of transformation, the ability to be entrepreneurial and innovate very rapidly and very inexpensively is really disrupting a ton of different business models. So just something to think about as you move forward. Okay, so I'm going to pivot here. How are we doing on time? All right, we'll move quickly through this. So one of the things that Meg asked me to do was just talk about Yankee Group a little bit. So this is a little bit of self-reflection. So I became the CEO of Yankee 2.5 years ago. I was brought in by our private equity owner to really transform the business and ultimately sell the business to a strategic. Alta Communications had been in the business for 5 years, so we were at the end of the fund cycle and really all about kind of finding a new home for the business, which is the classic way that private equity works. So Yankee Group is a global research, analytics, and advisory firm. We basically operate as a B2B publisher, right? So we kind of operate in publishing, data, information, and business services. So we kind of have a hybrid model, if you will. The firm pioneered the telecommunications industry market research business in 1970. It was founded by a gentleman named Howard Anderson, whose name may be familiar to you. Interestingly enough, it had 3 owners over the last 10 years after Howard sold the business to Primark back in the late 90s. It was owned by Reuters for a bit, Monitor Clipper, another private equity firm, and then Alta. So it's kind of been kicked around a little bit, right, and needed a refresh of the strategy. Offices in Boston and London with affiliates in Latin America, EMEA, and Asia Pacific. and under the roof over 500 years of telecom, wireless, and mobile expertise. So if we look at sort of why I joined Yankee, I won't belabor it, but some of the things were kind of the brand was very appealing. It's a big brand, very well known in the market research space. The business model, subscription businesses, are things I know how to run. I've got over 20 years of experience at Gartner, as well as other information services businesses. Mobile, big market opportunity. Thought leadership, Yankee had a ton of it. A solid team, and a blue chip client base. So my first 100 days, I went out and met with over 100 customers and prospects and really tried to understand kind of where Yankee was. Ultimately also kicked off a strategy process and the classic build esprit de corps with the team. Learned a couple of things as I was out there in the marketplace, that sort of chart on the left. The mobile ecosystem had shifted. So if you were to take where Yankee was when I went into the market 2.5 years ago, service provider and infrastructure or equipment vendor probably dominated 50% of that chart, even though when I talked to customers, it was exactly the opposite. Oops, we've got a disconnect. We got to figure out how we're going to kind of change this. So this whole notion of over the top had just grown dramatically through the recession and into now the 2010 timeframe. Devices as kind of the key window into the mobile experience, and ultimately that whole shift from the push to the pull, where the consumer was driving the experience they wanted to have at work and at home and on the go. Ultimately, we heard a couple things like Yankee is not well differentiated, not really seen as relevant. Mobile is our opportunity space. How are you guys covering that? Where's your expertise, et cetera? So ultimately, I asked the question, what would make Yankee distinct, relevant, and different, right? Good news is sort of 3 key things came back. One was we want facts, we need facts, and that's an actual client quote. We then want you to create from those facts your data, insights, right? So tell us what it means, and then tell us what to do. What strategies should we employ? So kind of there was a logic to what these clients and prospects were telling me. I won't read this chart, I swear, and these charts will be on the website. But we also did 50 in-depth interviews with heads of marketing, strategy, product, and technology in our client base, and heard a couple of interesting things. One is the mobility revolution is the opportunity space. Timely, accurate, complete data is critical to our business. We need to understand what's in the mind of our customers. No time to read research reports. Speed to insight is key. Hate hearing yesterday's news today. Ooh, feels tough for a research firm that publishes things on a monthly cadence and studies them for 90 days before we publish. Ouch. And that ROI became really critical, or was really critical for any investment they were going to make. So we took a look at the marketplace, right, and said, we can break this into 2 dimensions. One is those that get information and insight to market quickly, and those that study it and get it to market more slowly, if you will, but more comprehensively, perhaps. So we said we needed to balance that and so we're in the depth world. You can see research down at the bottom is where Yankee is, right? And that's kind of the world we were playing in. How do we start to move up into that upper half of the world to be able to get insight to market more quickly? So we decided to look at digital media players. We started to look at news organizations and how we could launch sites, newsletter, and ultimately drive that into our content stream. Second thing is we heard clients want insights on generating revenue. So studying the trends, the technology trends, and not being able to say what they mean to me and how I generate revenue from that was something that clients wanted and we weren't delivering. So being able to do that meant that we needed to get much more practical and actionable with our insights. We needed to be able to tell people how they could make money or save money or mitigate, right? So it wasn't always about making money, right? But that's where their kind of the primary focus was. But if you could save me money or help me mitigate a risk and avoid making a bad decision, that would be a good thing. So we decided to focus in that red box, which is really putting a stake in the ground and say Yankee helps you identify, understand, and exploit the array of opportunities enabled by the mobility revolution. And then finally, whoops, I hit that again. Here we go. I knew I hit the wrong button. We said clients want to consume content in new form factors. So there's a B2B website from my former employer, and you could probably pick up any B2B website from 2009, 10, and it would look like that. And it's just, not very compelling. And on the tablet, it's even less compelling. And on a mobile device, it's just terrible. So this whole notion of being able to help our clients consume content on the go, right? And also enable them to consume content at work. So being able to balance both the executive level audience and the end user audience. So strategy with market intelligence, marketing with competitive intelligence. So being able to balance those two was really critical, but form factor became important, and this whole concept of mobile first. So we arrived at this little formula. Speed plus revenue focus from form factor would help Yankee increase its relevance, and our focus was going to be on mobility. Okay, I'm moving quickly. That's the mission statement we laid out as we started down this path, which would have been the middle of 2011, right? So our aspiration is in the top bucket of who we wanted to become. The second bucket is what we do, and the third is the value we add for clients. So that became something I showed at every meeting with every client, every meeting with all employees, every board meeting, because that became the mantra of how we're going to drive down this path and move forward. So we said we had to lay out a game plan. So we had to streamline the business, focus on mobility, create these new insights for buyers. We launched this daily deliverable called Mobile Now, created a little brand and logo for it, build a new delivery platform, again with a mobile-first focus. We hired a third-party design firm called Fresh Tilled Soil up in the Boston area, excellent firm, helped us really drive this whole development effort from a design point of view. So classically, you would hire a development firm to build it for you. We said no. We're going to actually design a customer experience, a mobile-first experience, and then work back to our content. So it's a fundamentally different. The hardest people to get on board were the analysts, right? So what you would maybe think of the newsroom, right? Oh, we don't do it that way. That's not how our content gets done. You know, that won't work, right? So really kind of getting that to ultimately create a new client experience, and then ultimately have to transition the base, right? You got to take legacy over to, so everybody focuses on, ooh, it'll open up new markets, but what are we going to do about our existing clients and how we make money? We've got to lay out a game plan for how we're going to transition them. So we staged the activities for over a 12-month period of being able to reduce and divest. We sold an event, a trade show that my predecessor had bought. It's a good business, but didn't really fit. It was a trade show in the mobile infrastructure space. Decided that wasn't really core to the business, so we sold that to UBM and used those funds to help invest in modernizing our platforms and products, and ultimately restructuring our market. Not going to read this, but it's going to be in the deck. We created strategy on a page. And again, like the mission statement, this became something that you could always pull out and say, remember, this is what we said we're going to do. What are we doing against it? Right? So it became critical with employees, with the board, to make sure everybody was on the same page and what we agreed to do. So there was a whole operating plan behind this, but it became the way to really lay out what are the three thrusts, right? How are we going to get there, and in what time frame. We utilized something called agile development. Hands up, do people know what that is? Okay, so I'll just give you a quick overview. Agile software development, so this is really a software development construct. Your IT and CIO and apps development people would know this, is a group of software development methods based on iterative and incremental development, where requirements and solutions evolve through collaboration between self-organizing cross-functional teams. Okay? It promotes critical interactions through the software development cycle. So instead of, you may have heard of a term called waterfall, right, where you basically create a big, thick requirements document and you send it off to IT and they build you something that maybe arrives 3, 6, 12 months down the road. This is a model where you lay out a design of what you want to get to. You then back into a release schedule of functionality that you deliver to the customer, whoever that customer might be, internal or external, on a 2-week cycle. And you create smaller and smaller increments of value that you can ultimately create. So because we were building some software, right, this enabled us to go and have a conversation with a set of firms that understood what we were doing. And I had used this at Gartner in my last couple of years and also at Highline to really restructure product development. We were able to then take this from software development to product development, to actually lay in the different content packages and pricing and how we're going to restructure all the different pieces. So I was able to instantiate that process beyond software so we can manage that and also in parallel use the same model and same set of capabilities to develop product. So we're able to launch much more quickly and in parallel. Again, won't belabor this, but this is ultimately kind of the model we created, which was a cloud-based infrastructure and a mobile-first delivery vehicle with different workflows in between, from cloud delivery to our data processing and analytical tools. We separated old world into new world very quickly. So old world kind of became a place that we were going to ring fence and kind of atrophy. That will be shut down literally in the next 3 months. So we've now transitioned the entire client base onto this new platform. This is what the new platform looks like if you went to our website. Right? It's very tablet friendly, has the ability to share, different ways to click across to different content types, and has all of our different products and services on there delivered very nicely. As I mentioned, we created different content types. So Yankee, when I got there, was very much on the right-hand side of that chart. We've created new content and new deliverables on the right side of that. So our daily content, which we call Daily Insights and is produced both on the site and in a newsletter that goes out every day at 6 a.m. under the brand and the template of Mobile Now, is basically a aggregated news against each one of our thematic areas. We rewrite a lead story, we add analyst commentary and a data point and push that out. Takes the analysts 15 minutes in the morning to make a comment. It's produced by our editorial team. So it's 98% produced by the editorial team, right? Which are, sort of $30,000, $40,000 employees, right? Versus these $150,000, $200,000 smart analysts, right? I just need a comment from you, which in essence is a quote. We then took that and introduced a research note of 500 words called a weekly deliverable, which we call a perspective, which is an update on some major thematic issue, and typically we focus on 5 in each one of our themes that we produce on a weekly basis with a bottom line, buy, sell, hold on that particular technology or company that we've published on, and then our traditional short and long form research. Ooh, that got ugly. So we introduced a new value proposition very cleanly to ultimately help people make money, save money, and mitigate risk. Rolled this out to clients and to the sales force. So we are now down to the last 2 slides. So what did we do over that 18-month transformation? We repositioned to the mobile opportunity space. We are 100% there now. We reduced our burn rate by over 50%. We sold non-strategic events businesses. We sold the business to UBM in January. We instantiated agile development processes across all product development, designed and built a mobile-first client experience, restructured the content architecture, which I just mentioned, launched a new mobile advisory and planning service family, utilized PR, webinars, content syndication, and SEO to build the lead gen side of things, revamped the sales team, hired a new sales team, and a growth planner, and transitioned existing clients onto the new platform, and also started to grow new clients, which is great. And ultimately, this led to the sale of the company called the 451 Group, and you can see who they are. We are one of 3 divisions that are operating under the 451 Group since January 1st. So, a couple things I learned. 1, have a vision, right? 2, communicate your vision. 3, be authentic about your vision and your strategy, right? Be an agent for positive change. This was not easy. I had to be a cheerleader and also, have that stick to be able to push people along. But it was a delicate balance as we were moving through that because we had to move people out, we had to discontinue certain product lines, we had to talk with, there's a lot of moving parts in this. So being that energetic, positive agent for change, really critical. And ultimately have passion. You got to enjoy doing this because it is a roller coaster and it's not getting slower. It's getting faster. Thank you.
Terry, can you hear me?